Hello friends, this is Vidyavrat Agarwal and thank you very much for joining us on this live event of Google Hangout, and we appreciate wherever you are watching it from. This is great to have you all on this event, and this Google Hangout is all about test-driven development using C Sharp, and I will be talking about how to use test-driven development with C Sharp, what are its benefits, why you need to use this thing, and what are the benefits you get, why you need it, and all these sort of features and questions and answers. I will also be talking about some live examples to give you, and let me share my screen real quick. So here you should be able to see my PowerPoint presentation. This PowerPoint presentation is all about TDD, which is test-driven development. And the topic I gave it is inside out test-driven development, which means we will be talking in depth about test-driven development today. So let's set the agenda. So the agenda is that I will be giving introduction, then I will help you understand that why we need TDD and what is the nature of its adaptation, what benefits do you get. Then I will also be talking about what is system under test. Sometimes people call it SUT. I will also be talking about that why you need unit test. Then I will also help you understand that what exactly you do the unit testing for. I will also talk about properties of a good unit test, the structure of a unit test, followed by a very detailed coding demo in Visual Studio 2012. So let's move on. This is me. I am Vidyavrat Agarwal. I work as a software architect, .NET developer. I am also a Scrum Master. I'm an author, blogger, mentor. I'm also certified from Microsoft for various certifications. I am life member of Computer Society of India. Currently, I am located in United States. I live in Seattle area where Microsoft is. The city name is Bellevue. It's a small city, a suburb of Seattle. Then I have my own blog that is MyPassionFor.NET. I hope many of you are connected with me over there. Then recently I started something for my career mentoring, and I like to call it Road Ahead Solutions. So if you want, you can go to www.roadaheadsolutions.com and pay a visit. I also tweet via @.NET author is my Twitter handle. I am Microsoft MVP. I am C Sharp Corner MVP. So this is a little bit about me. You can read more about me via C Sharp Corner event pages or the articles I write. These are some of the books I have authored for A Press Incorporation. Now, this is my recent publication which happened few years ago about C Sharp 5.0, and this was about C Sharp 5.0 databases. So these are the books I have authored. Now, these are some of the books which I did the technical review for A Press. Now, let's begin with understanding TDD. Now, if you are watching us live and you have any questions, then there would be a way to to ask for questions, and you can type your questions there, and I would like to answer all the questions we have. So before we start, let me set the stage first. So this topic is again about test-driven development. And what test-driven development does, test-driven development allows you to test the functionality as you are developing. So let's see, let's begin with it. So TDD is a very happening term in industry these days, because many teams are going with agile development methodology, and agile is a very best and suitable methodology which um, really admires the features and benefits TDD is offering. So most of the time agile teams are working on test driven development. If you are on waterfall, many teams who are on waterfall methodology may not get those many advantages what agile teams are getting. Now, TDD is an evolutionary approach for development, and it is nothing more than writing test cases, actually unit test cases to be precise, as you are writing your dev or production code. So as soon as you start your production code, you need to think of unit tests, and you write your unit tests while you are coding. So both the things go together hand in hand. Now this is the screen. This image here on the screen shows the flowchart. So what normally happens? If you look at an approach where you are not following TDD, what happens is that developers go ahead and implement the functionality. Then it is baked into an executable, or it is hosted somewhere on the test site or somewhere, and then test team will go and test it. So basically, when your development is done for a particular feature, a user story, a functionality, or a bug you have resolved, whatever you did, when that thing is complete, then you hand it over to the test team. That is what the normal test and dev routine is. In test-driven development, unlike before, what happens is that developer himself or developer herself will be responsible to write unit tests for the functionality which they are implementing. Now the key is that you are testing your own code as a user. So whatever I write, I'm supposed to write an equivalent test case for that small piece of functionality to make sure that nothing is broken, and most importantly, that functionality is working as expected. So let's talk about this workflow here. This workflow is that you start the development code. Before you really go ahead and implement the whole functionality, you need to go to your unit testing project, and you need to write a failing test. As of now, I would recommend do not think in terms of how do I write a failing test without implementing the functionality, because I will be giving a demo about that. So let's not worry about this for now, but technically let's try to understand that what exactly the workflow is going to be. So I am all set to start my development code, my production code writing in Visual Studio or whatever tool you use. TDD is common approach. It can be used with any programming language. It is not specific to Visual Studio or .NET. But yes, since Microsoft Teams or Microsoft developers using TFS are fairly largely implementing agile worldwide, and that's why TDD is very commonly embraced and appraised by people who are on Microsoft.NET technologies. So coming back to the point that you start your production code writing, Before you implement the functionality which you know what you are going to do not write it. Instead, write a failing test. Then run the test. Make sure that test is failing. Then you go to write the code, the production code, to make that particular failing test pass. Once that test case passes, if you have any room for improvement, go ahead and refactor it. If there is nothing like that and everything is working fine, it's a fairly small, to the point, straight test case, then move back to the procedure. Before you implement another functionality, make sure you write another failing test. This process will continue until you come to the point where all your functionality is implemented as per the acceptance criteria. And then you cannot come or you cannot think of any more test cases. That's the point where you stop it. Now, here I used a word, acceptance. So, what exactly is acceptance testing or acceptance criteria? Now, with agile teams, this acceptance criteria is a very well known, established term. Usually, what has happened that agile teams are more designed to deliver things which are given by the product owner in the form of a user story. Every single functionality, whatever you do, unlike a waterfall model where uh, freezing the requirement was a very challenging task. What happens here that you are given a specific task, a specific feature for implementation, and you are given a specific acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria is that some of the most important points about that particular user story which you need to accomplish in order to get that story accepted by the product owners. So this is a little bit about agile and all. So I will give you a minute to look at this workflow diagram by yourself. And after a few seconds, once you have looked at it, you have ran yourself through this, I will start again. So there you go. Have a look at it, run it in your mind, and I will talk again. So I hope you were able to go through this workflow diagram by yourself. And let's move on. Now, this topic is going to be about benefits of test-driven development. So let's talk about the benefits, that what exactly benefits are given to the teams who are working on test-driven development. So TDD gives an opportunity to think as user of your code instead of an implementer of just the dev or production code. Because the normal development practices has always been that developer only writes the code and they are so confident that whatever they write works fine, and then they bake the executable or host the website on the test or stage environment, and development team or QA team comes into the picture. They test the functionality and they find a whole lot of bugs. So the issue here is not about avoiding bug finding, that will happen anyway. If there are some corner cases has been found, the key here is that you are taking equal responsibility of testing as a developer, and you help to deliver the quality product as soon as possible. So by doing TDD, the test cycle is not going to be reduced, or it will not be cut. There will be no cut in testing. Testing will still happen as it is through all the test cases as your team might be doing, or the processes you are following. But it is more about writing unit tests. So TDD is nothing more than writing unit tests, in short. As I said, what it does, it reduces bugs by identifying all the use case scenarios to reflect intent, which is the mindset of the end user, maybe some business needs, expected functionality, and business validations. So what all these things are? So all these things are anyways you have to implement in the form of some business rules, or some some business rules validations, some particular business related functionality, and how even user reacts to a particular thing. What is in user's mind when they come to this thing? What can they type? So you think of all those areas, and then you try to write unit tests to cover all these grounds and make sure that your code is not broken. Now, TDD also enables or empowers the developers to spend less and less time on debugging. So basically what is happening that developers who are following TDD, or teams who are following test-driven development, are known to spend less time on debugging, because what happens that many times you implement some functionality, you implement the code, which is which might work fine with the test scenarios which you did or you tested real quick for, but at the end when it is given to a tester who does rigorous testing, they found a whole lot of issues in that, which are sometimes slipped by the vision of a developer, because you are so much tightly coupled with your dev tasks. So in teams like agile teams or agile development teams, and who are following all such methodologies and who are really religiously following TDD, those developers are assigned hours, and developers give their estimates to implement even unit tests. I have worked with teams in India for some product development teams. I'm working right now in the States here for a very big organization in Seattle area. And all the teams I have worked with, they all are following TDD, even on our agile uh, dashboard. Agile dashboard is something where you put some columns on the wall, or you take a whiteboard and you paint it, or you draw some lines and columns on that, and you say, okay, did we complete the analysis and design of the user story? Is requirement clear? Is coding, is it ready for development? Has coding started? Did we complete the code review? Does it need unit tests and integration tests? Did code review pass? Has it been tested? Is it ready for acceptance? So all these things which I just said are nothing more than columns which go on top of the board or on top of the wall, and then these columns have various lines where you put different user stories you are doing in that particular sprint, and you keep putting check marks or dates whether you did that or not. So every day in the stand-up meeting, every owner or every dev and test will contribute to each line which they are responsible for on that dashboard to give the updates. So if there is a user story and where devs did not give update about, let's say, unit tests and integration tests, then any team member is authorized to ask, okay, what about this user stories unit testing? Then dev needs to answer that why they are not doing it, or whether this user story is not a good candidate for unit testing at all. So I hope you guys are following along, and if you want to talk more about agile development best practices, what all I just said about agile, user story testing, dashboards, and all these things, feel free to connect with me. I am also a certified Scrum Master, so hopefully I would be able to answer your questions and share my experiences with you. One very important thing which I have seen, which happens many times, is collateral damage. What unit testing does normally, many times people, to make sure that collateral damage has not happened, the term which testing team uses is regression. So whenever you fix a bug, for example, tester will still go ahead and estimate little longer than what it's supposed to do with the testing of functionality you just have implemented. So why do they estimate little longer than it take to test the functionality which you just fixed? The reason is there are always chances that whatever you have fixed may have caused another things to break. We call that collateral damage. That means a fix in one area may break the functionality in another possibly related or unrelated area which you do not own. So someone else did some other functionality somewhere in that coding file, C sharp file, or maybe IMVC controller or anything. And you went ahead, you implemented the functionality, and it causes collateral damage. So to avoid collateral damage, what you do is you are really focused on writing tests for whatever you implement. And since you have that habit and you are following TDD best practices, there are chances that you will be avoiding any collateral damage whatsoever in the whole production code. And this is the best you can contribute to as a developer. Now, TDD is also known to give another benefits when it comes to architecture, design principles like that. There is a design principle we call that YAGNI, or it's a concept which many architects and developers follow. YAGNI means you are not gonna need it. That means you are not going to use that particular thing. You are not going to need that particular thing. So what is that? This is nothing more than avoiding any over engineering. So YAGNI is about avoiding any over engineering. So what is over engineering? In industry, in software industry, over engineering has always been known to kill the development efforts, time, testing, coding, everything. So what happens many times, people go and they over engineer the things. Over engineer means you have implemented those many validations which are not needed as per the business, and so on. So you avoid all these things by implementing YAGNI, and these are the benefits of TDD. So before I move on, I would give you a few seconds to go through these 5 points by yourself. So I leave the screen as it is. Please go through it, repeat it in your mind, make sure you understand it, and then we will move on. So I hope you were able to go through all these 5 points. Let's move on. Now, any team who works on test-driven development, they always know a term called SUT, S-U-T. It is pronounced as SUT. SUT means system under test. So what exactly is system under test? Let's understand that. As you might have got an idea by the name itself, system under test means is the system or your code which you will be writing unit tests for. And why do you write those test cases? You write those test cases for accuracy, and for possible scenarios, which might be known to break the functionality or may cause some runtime anomalies, which means runtime exceptions, or give some errors, or even may not produce right results. So the output which is coming is not legitimate, means which is not accurate. So to avoid all these things, what happens, you need to focus on your system under test and really write all the possible unit tests around it. So here is the screenshot I have shown. This is a banking account class, and this class is basically representing the code which any banking domain would like to have. So for example, there is account balance, there is account status, is account active, is a function which is returning a bool, true or false, based on you give the account number, and it has balance, deposit, withdrawal, activate account, and all these kind of things are happening in that. So this is my system under test. Now, assume you are working in an agile team and you are given the task to implement is account active. And your user story reads, as a bank teller, I would like to know if an account is active by passing the account number, right? Now, this is the user story. So you estimated. Make sure when you estimate, you include your time for test-driven development, means writing unit tests. Do not give estimates just for the coding. That is not right. So give time with estimation, which includes unit test creation. So make sure you understand this thing, what I'm going to do. And this is known as system under test. So let's move on. So I think until now we have recapped that what exactly is test-driven development, what are the benefits, how does a system under test looks like, and so on. Now, before we move any further, let's understand one more time that why exactly unit test. I mean, we are talking about test-driven development, but now we started talking about unit testing. So test-driven development is a technique, it's a methodology. It's one of the best practices team follow. But to implement that, how do you implement it? The implementation of TDD is writing unit tests. So if there is anybody who wants to implement TDD, you have to create unit tests at the end, regardless of what technology you are using. So always remember that multiple individual unit tests contribute to the integration testing and so on, because what integration testing does, integration testing allows you to test the integration of various components of your system. So you may have a data access layer, business logic layer, validation, exception handling, and many other layers, caching, blah, blah, blah. All these things, when you create multiple unit tests, when you run it, they, they contribute to integration tests. Many times I have seen when we write in development, sometimes you'll end up creating even an integration test because you are crossing layers. You want to make sure that your code is going from your MVC controller to the service-oriented architecture to the database and coming all the way back. So your multiple unit tests can contribute to integration testing. Now in industry, the reason why people focus more on unit test is because of this triangle. And this triangle is nothing more than given by testing experts. Test people normally talk about this and they call it test triangle. This test triangle depicts that you always have the larger number of unit tests, always. So why more unit tests? Because the key is your development code, which drives the whole functionality. And since you are writing your development code, if you have more unit tests or a company has more and more unit tests, that means they are testing their code functionality very well. That's why you need to have larger number of unit tests at any given point of time. After that, the next number of tests could be integration test, and then acceptance tests, and then UI, user interface tests, and then you put it in UAT, user acceptance testing, and so on. Or maybe there are few more type of tests which your company or team is known to be doing. So the key factor here is that unit tests are always larger number of tests than any other type of testing your company or your team is doing. If you have more integration tests than in unit, then you are not following it well. There are possibilities to improve. So look for those areas where you can improve and you can have more number of unit tests than integration. Now, another thing is that if you look at effort and the timeline of your project, unit testing is something which grows. It starts growing over the period of time as it requires more effort and timeline of the project. So the more time you spend on the project, the more time you spend on the development, the more number of unit tests you are going to have. Whereas if you look at the light blue color thing, the second one on the right side diagram, integration testing, the layer, that light blue color integration testing, this thing here, this picks little later. So if you see at least 1/4 of your development life cycle here, because if you look at this point right here, almost 1/4 of this entire development thing, what is happening here at this point, there is no integration testing at all. You had only a curve going up with unit tests. And when you have sufficient functionality to contribute to your integration test, then you started writing integration testing. Much later, then system testing comes into the picture, where the test teams really starts playing critical role. They do the entire system tests. They call it sometime end to end, and at the very end, you spend some time on UAT, user acceptance test. So if you look at this right hand side image where we are showing effort and lifetime, what is happening that effort goes up and with the lifetime, so you spend a lot of time on unit testing and integration testing and UAT and system testing. And these things are correlated with the effort it needs and the lifetime. So according to me, unit testing is something which never ends. Even if you are going to fix something a real quick, sometimes devs call that hot fix. Even for hot fixes, you need to write a unit test. Do not just let it go. That I fixed it, I know it works fine, I tested it. Even though you tested it, make sure there is a unit test for that. Let me give you another a real good reason for that. Many teams who are doing continuous integration, in that continuous integration or who are really following build servers and all these kind of things, what happens is that whenever you are checking in, the build will kick and it will run all the unit tests and integration tests on the build server. And if any test fails, then your code is not checked in. We call that gated check-in. So in gated check-in, you need to make sure that all tests pass before your code is merged or checked in to the dev branch. Now, I hope what I'm saying is making sense to some of you. If you do not understand what I just said about continuous integration, build fails, build servers, no big deal. Either talk to your team members or your tech PM or tech lead about these things, that how your team is really doing that, or else feel free to drop me a line at my email ID. You can connect with me via various ways, and we can talk about that later. it's a topic in itself. So I hope you understand the importance of unit test. Now, next question comes in developers' mind. I have seen many times is that developers are known, according to me, sometimes developers are known to have mental block. It's kind of funny when I'm saying it because that means I'm saying something negative about developers, and I have actually seen that. Many developers are not able to think good test scenarios. And since they cannot think of good test scenarios, their code fails or they have a whole lot of bugs against them when they are checking in the code or giving it to a test person. So why test person is able to break it when you were not? The reason is you did not have the testing mindset. So let me be very clear here. I'm not saying that you have to be a tester, but let me tell you one very important thing, my friends. Industry trend is changing. When I say that, that means industry is now looking for a person who is equally good at multiple things. And I'm not talking only about countries like India or China, who are really developing nations and a lot of competition is there in companies, and most of the companies are service based organization. I'm talking even about production houses. I'm talking even about countries like US, Europe, and many other places worldwide, because information technology is becoming challenging everywhere. So if you want to be a really full-fledged developer, think of it if there is another wing in your hat, and you can really, you can really can think of test cases on your own and discuss it with the test person. And even if you don't want to discuss for whatever reason, then go ahead and implement all those test scenarios and then only move ahead. So what exactly I test when a situation is given to me? Now, let me give you some guidance, some ideas here. I am sure you might already be aware of these when you will see it. I'm not talking about anything out of the box all of a sudden. So let's see. Rule number one: why test cases fail? Boundary conditions. When you go, you need to know the boundary. What boundary conditions are? Empty or missing values. For example, somebody can pass zero or empty or null. So this is a boundary condition. Inappropriate values, which are not realistic from a business point of view, such as a person's age, could be -1, or it could be 200 years, or maybe 150 years, or 1000 years, anything like that. Date of birth is tomorrow's date or any time in future. So what is this? This is another case for boundary condition. Password is same as either first name or last name. I have seen this live. Some websites are doing that. If you try to put your last name as your password or your first name as your password, then some sites have a mechanism to complain about it, and they throws an error that your password cannot be same as your first name or last name. So I'm sure if you are a developer, you will. It's very easy to implement such things. It's no big deal. But what I'm trying to emphasize upon is that any unit test creation, remember that, and I repeat it, any unit test creation is not a big deal. The big deal is when you are not creating a unit test, when you are not writing a unit test. That creates a big deal. So test driven development is fun. If you do it, you would love it. It's really fun. And we will talk more about it going on. Number six is about special characters or case related conditions, means uppercase, lowercase, special characters, hexadecimal values, and all these things. Number seven is types of acceptable values in field. For example, let's say a numeric cannot hold characters, Name cannot hold numeric, and all these kind of things. Number 8, range. Range is very important. That means is another critical thing is that what is your business validation rule? What is the range for the data? Can I type anything? For example, a phone number. These days, I don't know if how many people are having landline, but yes, some businesses, offices, organizations, even homes in some rural areas are known to have landline, which has shorter number than the mobile phones. But if you have a field for cell phone or mobile phone number, you need to make sure that it holds 10 digits, right? So, or range could be that a person's age could be in the range of 1 and 120, something like that. Or you can, to be eligible user for this promotion, you need to live within the 10-mile radius of this particular thing. So all these things are falling in the category of range tests. So which is a boundary test where you validate the range of your business logic and then you move on. So talking about all these things, these are some of the boundary conditions which you may want to verify in your unit tests. Now, before I really talk about error conditions, let me help you understand this. This is kind of tricky. So I talked about 8 points. This sounds like I'm trying to say that whenever you are given a user story or a task, you need to implement all these things. That is, the answer is yes and no. Rule number 1, if you are an agile developer or if you are working with agile team, do not accept a story which does not have a well-defined acceptance criteria. I repeat it. Acceptance criteria is the key. Why acceptance criteria is the key? Because acceptance criteria drives the estimation of your hours for that user story implementation. So as a developer, you have all the rights to ask what exactly is the acceptance criteria. So for example, a user story is saying that pass a phone number to know the phone number owner's name and his or her city. So if I pass a phone number, your function is going to give me the name and the city of the person. Now, you just cannot think by yourself assuming that everybody has a mobile phone these days. So this is the user story. As a telecom administrator, I would like to know the owner's name and person by passing phone number. This is how user story reads. And there is no acceptance criteria. And you started working on it. You said, okay, pass the 10 digits and give the data back. That's it, done. All set, good to go. No, wrong. You may be right, but from agile development point of view, you made a mistake. Why did you start the user story development without having a well-defined acceptance criteria? Ask for it. The best can happen is they will come back to you and say the phone number is 10 digits, which you already thought. So your thinking is in right direction. What if they say, oh, that's a good point. Do this thing. What if they don't pass 10 digits? We have some customers who have landline, and our company's landline numbers are starting with this. And we do not care for the area code. We will find the area code on our own, but you do this thing only with the phone number. How about you are implementing that functionality for a one particular state, and that site is hosted in that particular region. They can recognize the IP address where the request is coming from, and they can identify your area code, but they only worry about the phone number. So there are a whole lot of scenarios. So never, as a developer, never underestimate any user story that it's so easy, I know in and out. Even though you know, drop an email to the product owner or the scrum master or tech PM, whoever you have, and ask that this is my understanding. There is no acceptance criteria in the user story. Is this a valid point? Please fill the acceptance criteria. A well-defined acceptance criteria contributes to the definition of entry. In agile development, definition of entry is a very important thing. That means your user story is ready for development. So there are so many such terms like that. As I said before, feel free to drop me a line, drop me an email, a tweet, put it on my Facebook, or whatever mechanism you like. Get in touch with me and we can talk more about it. Now, so I hope you understand that do not go by yourself and do not write extra unit tests which are not required, and do not start working on a user story if there is no acceptance criteria. Another thing, very important, if you are doing a sprint and your sprint is 2 weeks or 1 week or 4 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, the ideal is 2 weeks. Excuse me. So if you are doing a sprint and your user story is having more acceptance criteria later on towards the end of the sprint, and you do not think you can do it, then say no, or else ask for more time, or else ask for a new small user story or a feature request or whatever your team follows. So as a developer, you need to learn to say no. Reason is, if you don't know how to say no, then you always take extra things on you. When that ball of quality is dropped, it comes to you that how did you implement it? There are so many issues in that. So that's the beauty of agile teams, that they only do what they can do in the given timelines. They do not keep receiving requirements until the very last minute from the business or from the product owners and keep implementing those. And that's the reason why uh, teams who were doing waterfall had a lot of bugs and issues with the quality and a lot of testing efforts. So that's another reason, because requirement never stop. They keep coming. Business keeps changing their mind. I have worked with teams where if we have developed a user story as business said, they have to accept it, and you have received the story points for that. But it's up to the product owner to scrap that user story and say, okay, I accept that for now, but this is not what we want. We want something else. So they cannot take the credit off of your plate that you did not do it. It's their mistake. They did not give you the right requirements. And then another story comes which have some data from the previous user story and say, okay, we did this thing, but we want it to be done this way. So in short, agile involves developers and product owners and business together. They go hand in hand. They are equally responsible for development. They contribute to the development by giving right requirements at right time and unblocking the team. Now, moving on, I hope I talked a lot about agile and giving you a lot of information about that as well, because this is a very important thing in today's world. So make sure you are becoming aware, you are educating yourself about agile practices. Error conditions. You all know that this is one of the favorite thing what developers always look for, exceptions, what they are good at. They can avoid exceptions, but they are not good at thinking of test cases around boundary and all these kind of things. So like invalid data, argument exception, divide by zero, access denied, null reference, check for existence, file not found exception, directory not found exception, all these kind of things. So so make sure you are doing all these things as best practices. So you can do all that. And before I move on, I will take a minute and see if there are any questions, anything. So if you are watching it live, let me help you that how you can ask a question. So if you are watching it live, I just typed hi in that window. So if you are watching it live, you should be seeing my photo, my name, Vidyavrat. On the top right hand side corner, there would be a circle and a question mark in that, and then there would be a tile, a rectangle, a small rectangle with small cubes inside that. If you will hover your mouse on the icon just next to the question mark in the circle and you will click on that, you will see Q&A, a blue color thing which will say question and answer. You click on that. When you will click on that, it will show a window. In that, you will see a button, green color button, which would say ask a question. You click on that and you can type your question there and submit. When you do that, that question will come to me and I would love to answer that for you. So I hope I explained how to do that. Again, if you are watching it live, on the right hand side corner, you will see my small photo and a round, a circle with a question mark in that. Next to the question mark, there is a small icon having some cubes in that. Click on that small rectangle. Inside that, you will see Q&A. Click on Q&A, and then you will be able to see it. So moving on. So I talked about this thing. What do I test thing? Now, before we really jump into coding, let's understand what exactly is a good unit test. What are the properties of a good unit test? Because when developers start coding, uh, it appears like it goes endlessly. You keep coding. That's not right. You are not supposed to do like that. So here are the properties of a good unit test must have. Let's see. Automatic. So each test must automatically exercise a small functionality in terms of invoking the test and verifying the results. Why automatic? Because you are coding, so you will use some sort of unit testing framework. Either it could be MS Test, that is Microsoft's test framework. It could be NUnit, or it could be anything else your company is using. And it will be part of either your build system or maybe sitting on your dev machine where you will run the test automatically before you check in the code, and then you are good to go. So basically the key is that tests should run automatically. Thorough. Unit tests are supposed to test all possible areas of functionality which is subject to failure due to incorrect input. When I say that thorough, it's kind of confusing. Unit tests are supposed to test all possible areas. Does it mean that I can write one unit test which verifies everything? No. If there are different boundary tests, write different unit tests. If there are different business validations, write different business validations. For every single thing, you have to have one unit test. One single unit test cannot test everything, that you keep going in the if else. That is not right. If you have to test the boundary in a different unit test. So it has to be thorough, but only in terms of what exactly you are testing. Repeatable. Unit tests must be repeatable, build after build. When I say build after build, I did not only mean that the build server. Build after build also means that when you are compiling your code, you are adding new features, fixing issues, compilation errors, building it. Make sure each time you build, you make some changes, make sure you run your tests. Because sometimes some collateral damage can happen. You fix something in one area and then it fails the another test case, knowingly or unknowingly. You cannot imagine what impact it might have made internally. Some function call, some variable, some enum, something could have happened and some test cases will start to fail. So make sure you have a habit to run all the tests as a sanity check before you do the final check-in. Many development teams have even checklists And that checklists, I have worked with a team on Agile where we were having a checklist. Even many companies have the checklist for definition of done. Definition of done, definition of done is known as DoD. DoD, definition of done, is a checklist which many agile product owners ask from the dev teams before they accept a user story. So they will accept a user story when your definition of done is met. Definition of done says that I wrote the unit test, I wrote the integration test, we did the code review, testing has been done, code has been code has followed the best coding practices, all these kind of things. And all tasks in the TFS or SVN, whatever source control you are using, all tasks are closed and complete, and n number of things. You can add your own issues and your own. You can address your own concerns in that. And this definition of done is then presented to the product owner, and they will open it and they will see everything is check, check, check. And then they say, okay, I accept the user story or I reject the user story. So I have worked in such environments where we have worked on every single artifact of agile development, and that was kind of a good thing because we followed the agile in true means. And I'm still working with a team who does like that. So independent. Independent, as I said earlier, I talked about this a little bit in the previous statement, repeatable, that unit tests must be independent of another test. So each thing you test only in one particular unit test. One unit test is not supposed to test things for another one. So do not mix. Keep it separate. So collateral damage, I hope you understand. That means fix in one area causes the issue or causes the failure in another area. Hence, a unit test must focus only on a small aspect of a big functionality. Always remember, unit test is not a big deal. Unit test is a piece of code which exercises the small development code or functionality for testing purpose. So you exercise testing for a small, very small development or production code. That's it. That's a unit test. So you write some more production code, you write another unit test. You write some more production code, you write another unit test. And other than that, unit tests also target basically to all the business validations, rules, boundary, test range. All these kind of business validations can be achieved in the form of one particular unit test. So, and unit test should be easy to discover where the issue in the dev code is, because if one of your unit tests is failing, you know what exactly is going wrong. So for example, your phone number is accepting a length less than 10. That means, and you run a test and that test is failing because you are able to pass less, then what happens? That means you are doing wrong. So there are always positive and negative scenarios. You have to even let the negative scenarios pass. You cannot fail any test. Negative also need to pass because you are testing negative. It throws an exception and so you pass it. When I say it fails, negative is failing. Negative is failing means it is accepting that and not giving you an error. So that's kind of confusing, but we will talk about it a little later. Professional. Since you are a developer, do not forget to follow the best coding practices. Do not forget to follow the best practices to write a unit test. So you are a developer, right? You love to code and you code like it's a masterpiece. So make sure you are following right coding principle no matter how small or big your test case is. Many times I have seen developers think it's only 2 lines of code I'm writing. So what rocket science in that? This is rocket science because you love to code. This is your code, and no matter whether you write one line or one variable, it has to be as precise as possible. So sometimes I see people start typing variable names whatever they like. I read some articles on websites where people are creating class names with whatever name they want. or even it is starting with lower character, lowercase, and variable name are starting with uppercase, functions are starting with lowercase, and all these kind of things are happening. Uh, these things can happen, and I'm sure as a human being, I must have done that too. But what I'm trying to bring here to the table is that error is to human, but do not make it a practice. If you have posted an article somewhere, for example, the website which I really love is C Sharp Corner, and which I am representing today as well. This via this Hangout session, C Sharp Corner, we have a great feature where you can edit the article. So if you posted your article in hurry or for whatever reason, or you missed that particular thing, go ahead, edit the article, and fix those things. These things are easy because on C Sharp Corner, we have few million users coming every other day. Now, what happens on that case? Maybe few 100,000 out of those few million will hit or will go through your article. And what do they feel? So, I'm trying to say is that keep it as professional as possible. Professional, not in terms of that you be just professional and you only think about yourself, not that professional. Professional means is you still be a good human being, be kind and courteous, and professional in terms of writing your code. All right. So if you want to remember these things, you can remember it as a trip. A trip. A is automatic, T for thorough, R for repeatable, I for independent, P for professional. A trip. So it's nothing. You once you get into the habit of writing unit tests, you do not need to remember all these things. Just a suggestion, if you want to remember, you want to talk to somebody about it, it's a trip, automatic, thorough, repeatable, independent, and professional. Now, how do you structure a unit test? Now, an ideal unit test can be divided into three main sections. So any unit test is divided into three sections. So what those questions are. So before I go any further, I have few questions coming, it seems. So let me see who asked what, and I will try to combine those questions all together if they are related, and then we will move on. Give me a minute here. I'm going through all the questions. Okay, so let's see. Let me go back to the panel real quick. And just 1 minute here. So I will go one by one. I guess Raj Mittal asked, I am working on an existing very large code base. How would I apply TDD here? So Raj Mittal, TDD normally happens when you are writing your code. If you already have a huge amount of code done, you have to, I don't know, you did not specify what methodology you are using. If you are doing agile, I don't think you can do anything to that because it's a technical debt for you, your team. Technical debt is that when you have a lot of leftover things and issues you wanted to address, but due to time constraints and your agile team uh, methodology following, you cannot go back and fix the things. So it's a technical debt for you guys. You have to have some budget and estimation and resources who can go into each major functionality and write unit tests for the pre-written code. But what I can suggest to you for now is that you can start practicing TDD for any code which your team is writing right now, or you will begin in near future. But there is no mechanism other than dedicating some time, budget, estimation, and resources to the previously written code. There is no such tool, nothing like that. So if I did not answer it well and you wanted to discuss it any further, feel free to drop me a line and we can talk separately one to one. And next question is from Vishnu Narayan. He says that, just give me one second. Give me a minute, guys. I'm going through all the questions. It's kind of confusing because you guys are, more people are putting questions, so it's kind of shuffling for me. Okay. One person asked very intelligent question. Abhishek Yadav. Um, it's a good question. I like this. All of you are doing great job, I must say, and I really enjoy. I know many of you, not personally, but we are connected on C Sharp Corner, so that's kind of cool thing about that. Um, Thanks, Abhishek, for your question. And his question is that my doubt is if we will do testing and coding parallel, doesn't it take time? He asked very intelligent question. And yes, my dear friend, it will take time. And that's why, um, if you remember, just some time back when I started, I was talking about that you need to estimate when you are accepting a user story, you need to estimate for unit testing. I know many teams have a lot of push from their managers and management, and but if your team, as I said, it's not you who can do it. It's your team who has to give you enough time to think of test cases because creating unit test is not that easy as it sounds. And I will do a demo and we will talk about it. But yes, in short, to answer your question is yes, it takes time and you need to do the estimation for that. As I said, I will repeat it one more time. I'm trying to be as efficient and as quick and as reasonable with every question. But if I do not answer it to your satisfaction level for some reason, please feel free to connect back with me with your question or anything else which comes in your mind later. All right, who asked this? I guess it is, if I'm reading it right, the question and the name together. Ruchir Saxena. Thanks, Ruchir, for your question. And he said that in my organization, unit testing is not done by developer. How can I start practicing unit testing? I kind of have a doubt about it if you really understand what unit testing is, because unit testing is creating code. Unit testing cannot happen without writing code. That's the key. So if developer is not doing it, then who else is doing it? I guess test team. And I don't know if any company, especially in India, has a test team who is efficiently coding as well, because we have a different way of doing things and organization culture. So to me, I would say that to answer your question, I would say unit testing is always needs to be done by developers. And if your testers are writing unit tests, that is not right, because whoever is implementing the functionality, only that person supposed to write unit test. Other person can write integration or any other kind of test, but not the unit test. So I think I need some more information from you, Ruchir, before I do that. Gopala Krishnan KL said that please share the recorded conversation. So this is live as of now if you are watching, Gopal. And if you got disconnected or anybody got disconnected, this would be live on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/mypassionfor.net. You can go to that YouTube channel directly by my blog also, www.mypassionfor.net. So certainly it is recorded. You do not have any worry about that. Okay, now next question is Vishnu Narayan. I never involve in unit testing in my company. We are not using unit testing. How can I learn to write? Vishnu, a very good question, buddy. I like that. That is happening almost in many companies. And as I said, the reason behind that is because your team is not doing test driven development. And the very reason to that is because your team is not following agile. So that's why all these things happen. Soon after I finish this hangout today, I will be posting a very detailed, very lengthy article on C Sharp Corner, of course. And you can go through that, and that will help you to begin with unit testing. And if you or anybody wants to learn unit testing, it's not a big deal because when I will do the code demo, you can start practicing that on your own in your company as well. So you can practice that. I will tell you how to do it. Now, Suresh Babu asked, is dependency injection part of unit testing methodology? I would say no, because dependency injection works when you are doing more of integration tests. So if you are injecting your dependencies, that means you are out of the boundary, out of the criteria of unit test. So I do not say that unit tests are required to use dependency injection. If you are doing that, then you are going more towards integration test. So the answer is no for unit test and yes for integration. All right, Pawan Singh said, can you show some practical example how to, where did it go? How to implement something. Let me read back. So your questions are shuffling because new questions keep coming. So I am making sure that, and Sumit Jolly is doing great job. He's my buddy on C Sharp Corner, and he is also moderating this live hangout session for me from New Delhi area, India. And thank you, Sumit. I am seeing that you are also replying to some of the questions. That's cool. I appreciate that. And let me real quick read that thing which I was finding earlier. Yeah. So can you show some practical example how to implement unit testing with best practices? So that question is asked by Pawan Singh. So as I said at the beginning when I was setting the stage, the agenda was that I will show you code demo. So do not worry about it. I am going to do it. Sumit, I hope I answered all the questions. And if not, then either you can reply to those questions or else I will give it a look again when I will come back. So, all right. So let's move on, guys. Structure of a unit test. So as I just said, somebody asked about the best practice. So structure of a unit test is also one of the best practice, and then we will do the code demo later. An ideal unit test code can be divided into three main sections. So sections are number one, arrange. What does arrange mean? Arrange means you do the setup. So set up all conditions needed for testing, creating any object, allocating, initializing any variables. You need to do any initialization to run your test case. That is arrange. I will show you an example and then you will understand it. Then you need to act. Act is invoke the method or the function you are using with possible parameter or values you want to pass for testing purpose. That is your act. And then you assert. Assert is to verifying the tested method is returning the legitimate results, and as per your expectation it is passing, failing, or whatever you are doing. So three A's are arrange, act, and assert. These three things has to be there. Sometimes in some tests you may see that you do not need to arrange anything. That may happen. So you just directly begin with act and assert. So, but if you can refactor your test code, you can again come back to all the three things: arrange, act, and assert. So if your test is so pretty straightforward, you may skip arrange sometimes, but it's not mandated that you have to have it. But it is good to have these three things in any unit test if possible. Without assert, there is no testing. So assert is must. Act is also must, because act means you are invoking the function. But sometimes you don't need to initialize anything, or you invoke directly a function and that returns some data without passing anything or without um, initializing any variables, or you don't need to set the environment to perform the testing. So that can happen. So we can ignore that for now. Now let's do a real quick demo. So this is fun time begins now. So let's see. So here, this is my test code I'm having. This is my production code. Let me increase a little bit font size for you guys. And let me take some of these namespaces off of here. Now, what I'm going to do here is I have a solution. I call this bank application, as you can see, I hope. And in this solution, I have my production code. This is my development code. And then to follow the TDD, companies follow this solution structure actually. This is real structure I'm showing you here. Then they have an equivalent unit test project. In this unit test project, the one mistake I did is I should have called it accounts unit test. I just left it unit test 1. I should have called it accounts or account unit test. So that means that this project underneath here, unit test bank application project, will have one .cs file for each .cs file of your production code. So, so each .cs here will have one extra .cs here. So that's the key. So you keep adding .cs file. Now, regardless of how many test cases you are going to have in that, even if you have one test case, you still have one separate .cs file. That's the key. Do not dump all the test cases in one. Now, if you do that, you will also follow the single responsibility principle from Solid. Single responsibility principle says that there should not be more than one reason to change a class or to modify a class. So that's again a topic in itself. But since I gave you the clue, single responsibility principle, you may want to go and read about it. Now, this is my class. Let's have a quick glance to it, how I'm doing it. So this is my namespace. Here I called it bank application.savings. This is my account class. I have a double variable account balance. Initially, every bank account is $0.00 or rupees or whatever currency. Then account status is always either active or deactive, true or false, I'm calling it. Then I have some roles here, whether you are a customer or you are a manager. Then I have a bool function here, is account active, and I'm passing it a string account number, and it will return me the status. Similarly, balance returning me balance, deposit returning me balance with new amount, withdrawal is returning me balance after deducting the amount, and activate account is telling me that a user role you need to pass, an account number you need to pass, and then your account can be activated and deactivated. Now, this is my code. Now, coming back to the point, is this, why did I write like that? This is not mapping to any real world production code. Because if you see here, why did I leave it like that? Here, I left it just like only plain simple return statements, no validation, nothing. Why? Because I'm going to follow test driven development. That's the key. So look at deposit. In this function, isn't it your responsibility that you cannot deposit -1? You cannot deposit $0 or 0 rupees, right? Or in withdrawal, think of withdrawal. You cannot withdraw amount more than your account balance. Make sense? So where is that validation? I am giving you some ideas that how do you test. So all these things are acceptance criteria. So if I am going to implement a user story for withdrawal, then user story acceptance criteria would say uh, you cannot deposit, sorry, you cannot withdraw more than the account balance. So if I have 5,000 rupees in my account or $1,000, then I cannot withdraw more than 1,000 for sure, right? Now, there are many other things. You cannot withdraw just zero, that you go to the teller, you fill a check, $0, give it to him. He literally processes that. You see an entry in your net banking statement, $0 minus, and nothing went off of your account. What is this? If there is no clause that you cannot accept zeros, you need to tell the user back that you are entering zero, this is wrong, bank cannot process it. What if you do, some net banking transfer, $0 from my account to your account? How would that work? So all these things are boundary conditions, range tests, business rules, business validations. Think of this. This is kind of cool. I like it. Activate account. Who can activate your account? Only manager can. A customer cannot. So where is the validation here that we are checking the role whether you are a manager or not? Then only we can activate your account. And before we activate, are we really checking whether account is already active or not? Right? What if I pass the account number and I pass manager and I say activate it? What if it's already activated? Right? So so many things like that you need to think in terms of validation. Think of this here. Is account active? What I'm doing here, you pass the account number, I am returning false. In what scenarios account would be active, right? You need to think of those unit tests, that what are the bare minimum things you need to validate to create a unit test first, and then let it fail, and then you write your production code. So currently, if you see, this is how you begin with. I did not write even a single validation code, no functionality, and I am moving to my unit test project. So this is my unit test project. And what I did, I created a unit test. Let me increase the font size a little bit for you guys. So here I have added the reference to the DLL of bank application.savings. You can see it's here, bank application, the assembly, and this is my unit test. This is, I'm using Microsoft test framework. If your company is using any unit, you can do that. It's not much different. On C# corner, I have written 2 articles, one on using Microsoft test framework with C# and another one was about using unit testing with any unit. So if you will go to my profile page, you can click on my articles and you can search over there and you can find 2 articles, or you can go to my blog www.mypassionfor.net and you can search there any unit, and those articles will be listed so you can easily access those, and you can read a little bit more about this. So let's talk about it. So what I'm doing here is this test method is the attribute which defines it's a test method and it needs to run in the test explorer. I'm setting the priority, that priority is 0. It's very important to run. Test category is happy path. Happy path and sad path. There are 2 terms which exist in industry. Happy path means that you are testing the positive scenarios. Something easy you are testing. And when you start testing a little bit like exceptions and more negative scenarios, you are not passing proper input or something like that, we call that sad path. So basically, when you expect I pass the data, I expect some output, that is happy path. And when you expect that I pass the data, you do some data scrubbing, you are expecting some exceptions, runtime anomalies to be handled. Those are actually sad path. So in terms of testing, if I tell you what how testing people talk sometimes, positive testing and negative testing. In terms of test-driven development and unit testing, we do not have positive and negative. Rather, we used to call it happy path and sad path. Some teams I have seen, some people I have seen, they talk unhappy path. Opposite of happy is sad, and you can also call it unhappy. But my preferred way of calling it is sad path because that is how test-driven development teams like to call it, and documentation about test-driven development and unit testing also likes to call it sad path. So happy path is pretty straight approach. I have my account class here and I am arranging it. See this? I am arranging. What does arrange mean? I am setting the stage, initializing the things so I can act on that. So arrange means I created an object. Then I am acting. What do you act? Your act is your action. My action is that I am assigning an actual result, Boolean, and to that Boolean, from the object account, I am invoking is account active, and I am passing a string variable 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I am asserting. My assert is I am expecting it to be true. So I am saying assert dot is true, passing account result down here. If this thing fails, then it will give me an error, failed, account is not active. So this is my small unit test, and this is happy path because I am passing directly input, and test needs to run against the production code and give me some data back. So I hope you understand what it is. And before we go any further, let's run this thing. So to run this in the unit test, if you are using Microsoft Test Framework, right click and I can say run test. So as you can see, my test ran, and I see this test here. It failed, and it says the error is here, if you can see. And it says that this is the error here. Failed, account is not active. And why did that message come? Why did it fail? That's what I am doing test-driven development for. If you remember why I am failing it, I am failing it because I am following test-driven development. And before I write any production code, I need to have a failing test. What do we mean by I without writing any production code? Didn't I write production code here? You only declared a function with bare minimum thing, but my code to validate the account number, do the business logic around it is not there. Reason is if you do not have this account class, if you do not have is account active at all, then what will you call here? When you put this dot, what IntelliSense will show you? Because there is no is account active. Sometimes people have a misconception that having no production code means I don't need to have any method, nothing. That is not right. Because in that case, your testing code will not compile at all. What will you type? You are typing fictitious names, is account active. So the key is let the code compile, write it, but do not fill any implementation. See how any business has by default set it to false, right? Any integer by default is set to 0, right? Any string by default is set to null, right? So what we are doing, we are leaving it as it is. See, I'm returning just plain simple plus. But my unit test is not about only these things. I want to verify whether my amount is 0 or not. Am I withdrawing more than the balance? Am I trying to activate my account whether my user role is customer? So where are those validations? So you write unit test for those areas first, and then you fill the gap in your production code. That's the key. So here we are doing this whole thing. And why my test failed? Because when it came to here, it just simply returned account status. So I passed the string account number, it came here, and it passed me false because by default I initialized it to false. That makes sense. So my test is failing, and I am following TDD fairly well. What I need to do now is, since my test case failed, I need to go and fill the gap in my production code so my test case starts passing. How do we do that? So I have to save some time here, I have some code snippet pre-written, which is no big deal, very easy code. So here, my production code should look like this. And I'm saying if my account number not equal to null, then set account status to true, otherwise account status to false, and return account status. Now, if you recall, when I was doing the properties of a unit test slide, I mentioned that your unit test has to be professional and make sure you follow the good coding practices. Good coding practices apply everywhere. And some teams I have seen, they do not use curly braces when they are writing single line statements with if and else. That is okay. Your code will not complain about it. But there are some static code analysis tools and some code reviewers, including me, who are very particular about putting curly braces, even if it is single line of a statement. So if you are using StyleCop as a code analysis tool, which is a free download, you can go to Internet Explorer, Google or Bing of your choice, and type StyleCop, and it will give you a free download. You can download it, restart your Visual Studio. It will come in the Visual Studio menu, and you can run a static code analysis. And if there is any statement without curly braces in if else, it will give a warning about it. And many teams follow the best coding practices that you cannot check in your code um, if there are even warnings. So these things you need to take care of. So I recommend you always follow the best coding practice, no matter it's a single line or whatever. So I recommend using curly braces. And so this code looks pretty neat, very easy line of code here. And I save it and I real quick build it. And I go back to my unit test now, and I select it from here, and I say right click and I say run selected test. And as you can see, my test case passes now because I am verifying that if account is not null, then you set it to true, otherwise you set it to false, and hence my test case pass. So I hope you guys understood this part. Let's move on. Now that is fine, I did that. 1, 2, 3, 4, I passed. Now how about this test case? I have another test case right now, which I am going to implement. As you see, I did not write any further production code. So once that functionality is achieved, one test case is passed, do not write anything else in your production code. Go back to unit testing project and write another test. Another test is about sad path. I'm expecting some exception to be thrown. So there is an attribute in unit testing, expected exception of type argument exception. So if you put that here, I am arranging, and then I do my act, and it will auto assert it because I have given this attribute here. So you do not need an assert in this case. Now I'm arranging again the same thing, creating an object. On the object, I am saying is account active, and I'm passing it null. Right? Now let's do this, and I save it, I select, and I say run tests. So this test case argument exception is actually failing. And why is it failing? Let's see. It says here, Focus on this line. An exception was expected by attribute. So what is happening here? That means why I am expecting an exception. The key is that if you are a dev and you are writing something, are you ready if somebody passes null to your code as an account number? If you pass null, how would your production code behave to that? You need to throw an exception, right? Because you are a binary, you are a DLL. So your UI will catch that exception, your UI user interface will handle that exception. But since we are testing right now, and UI team might be different or it could be you, but are you really taking care of such issues? So that is what we are trying to target here. So this test case failed because I did not throw an exception if I'm passing null. So that means my code will break if I pass null here because I am checking only not equal to null. Make sense? So let's move on and let us fix that code. And I have some code already which I have in my code snippet file. So let's see what I'm doing here. I'm saying if account not equal to null, then set account status equal to true. Otherwise, else if string dot is null or white space and you are passing account number, then throw new argument exception, say cannot pass null account number. You can think more wisely about these error messages. I know about error messages, there is always a room for improvement. The teams I have worked with, we have business analysts who are known to give such error messages as per the business requirement, as per their customers' need. So I recommend you go and check with your business analyst. Do not write error messages on your own unless it is something fairly simple. When I write code, I have a habit to run all my error messages through a business analyst or the product owner so they can approve it. And as soon as I get it back from them, I just copy paste it in my code and we are good to go. So we have this code right now, and let's build it one more time to make sure everything is fine. And now I come here, and another habit I would recommend is, if you see, I previously had that test case. Now I have two test cases here, right? Go back to your test case. One test case is account active, and the second test case is account active when I'm passing null. Now, many times I have seen developers only run those test cases which just failed. This is wrong. You should run all the test cases which has recently passed and the one, of course, which you fixed because it was failing. So here, if I want, many people only select this test case and right click and say run selected test. I would say do not do it. Instead, select the whole folder on top, right click and say all the tests. Run selected test means the whole tree, whole folder will run. And that means my whole test suite as of now ran. That means this new fix which I did not cause any collateral damage to previous tests. In this case, it's fairly simple because I am just doing the same thing as account not equal to null. So previously we were passing 1, 2, 3, 4 as an account number. So this account active success is not supposed to fail because I'm already covering that over here. But as a good developer, it is your responsibility to test often and test early. Test often means you need to run your test again and again. Test early means test as soon as possible, as soon as you implement your code or as soon as you have a failing test, write the production code against that. So test often, test early. Remember that. It's a key. Now, another unit test I have is about this. So let me uncomment it first and then we will go through this thing. So I have two tests passing as of now, and Another one I have is that what if I pass a blank space? So I'm passing blank space and let's see what happens, right? So according to this code, what should happen? So I have my here is null or white space and I'm passing account number. So it should catch that thing and it should pass because I am expecting here an argument exception, which my code is throwing right here, and hence this test case will fail. So let's see. So I run this whole thing, select it, and I say run test. So if you see here, this test case failed. Basically what happened, exception is not thrown. That's why it's failed. I hope you understand what I'm saying, right? So since we are expecting exception and exception didn't occur, that's why it failed. But why did it fail? I am passing a space here. That space is being caught here. So why it did not throw an exception? So to address this thing, let's do this. Hover on the mouse, hover on this with the mouse and right click and say debug test. So before I do that, let me put a breakpoint real quick. Hover mouse, right click, debug test. Let's see what's going wrong, why it did not pass. So here I am pressing F10 to step over. Now I am on this line where is account active. I am trying to step into to investigate further what is going in the accounts class with is account active method. So before I do that, if you see this is your empty string, see that actual result as of now is false. So I say F11 right now. When I said F11, I am here, and as you can see, account number is coming as empty. It's a space. It's not empty, it's a space. So account number is passed, which is a space. I am pressing F10, which came here, and account number is again a space. Of course, it is not equal to null, and I say F10, F10, it went inside. F10, that means this thing else never got executed because I passed a space, and that's why space is not equal to null, and that's why I did not receive any exception and my test case failed. That means if I pass a space, this current production code is not going to handle that. So such issues I have seen in real world as well, real time in code review also. When we do code review, many times people cannot catch such logical things because code reviews are very time sensitive thing. It involves one developer. Like many teams I work with, minimum 2 people need to do the code review. One person cannot do a code review. So it is having 2 people's time for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour. And many times people just skim through. So in my team, when we do it, we also ask the developer to run all the unit tests before we do the code review. So when developer runs the unit tests for you, you can see which one is failing, which one is passing, which made sure that everything looks good. Because if your eyes can miss some logical things, then those are being caught by the unit test. And we also review the unit test code, by the way. It's not just production code. Code review also needs to happen for your unit test, no matter it's 1 line, 2 line, 10 line, regardless of number of lines. So the key here is that I'm also showing you that how to debug a unit test. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate. Not only that it's failed just like that, I made it fail intentionally so I can show you how to debug unit tests as well. Now, if I say F10, it will quit and it never went to the status. And right now, account state is set to true and exception never been thrown. And that's why test case failed. So this is how we do it. Now, to fix that, we need to stop, and I remove this debugging thing, and I go to my another code here, and I fix it back in the production. And my production code, according to me, should look like something like this. So this is my production code where I'm saying you pass the account number. If a string is null or white space, then you pass account number. It should throw an exception, otherwise account status equal to true. So, and then I'm returning the account status, and I save it. Since I made the change, I build it back, and as I said earlier, whenever you run the test, you need to run all the tests, not just what just failed. So I have two previously written test cases. If you see again, this is account active success when I was passing the account number, exception success when I was passing null, and argument with white spaces when I'm passing a blank space. So I select this folder on top, I right click, and I say run selected test. If this code works, all three test cases should pass. As you can see, all test cases are passing. That means this code is sufficing whatever is needed. This code suffice what you need. It is sufficient for that particular scenario. Now, I know there are few more scenarios which you might be thinking, what about this, what about that? And that's exactly what I want to trigger and poke you for, that you need to think in those directions. There are few still areas. What if I pass string.empty? I'm checking only null or white space. I'm not checking null or empty, right? Now, I'm not checking any length, right? I'm not checking, can I pass letters A, B, C, D? So there are many more areas like that. So think of those things, and before you implement in your production code here, make sure you have an equivalent unit test, let it fail, go back and fix it. That's the whole key. And then you will see your isAccountActive method has grown from, I wrote only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I wrote only 10 lines. If you will implement a whole lot of scenarios as per your acceptance criteria, boundary tests, error conditions, it will grow up to 50 or 100 lines. Your production code, not your unit test. So let the production code grow from few lines to hundreds of lines, but your unit test should not grow more than 4 or 5 lines, because you are exercising only a small code of your production to verify that it passes and it meets the requirement. It should not be more than 4 or 5 lines. Now, one more thing I will show you here is that there is a way to run it by traits. If you remember, I gave the category. The category I gave is the test category. Here is sad path, and here I had a test category as a happy path. So if you want to run it by categories, you can come here and you can say traits. If you see here, you can see all these things. So it says happy path. So for example, um, some agile development teams, when they have less time, I have done that in real world. When we have less time and there is a lot of push, and a lot of user stories are sitting on your sprint, some teams start focusing more on happy path testing rather than sad path. And they say that you handle the exception in general, but do not target to each and every negative scenario, and focus more on the happy path. Happy path means the direct input from the customer, that not some corner cases, that what can happen if somebody enters the age is 150 years or something like that. So we call that happy path. Happy path means all goody goody things. Now here, if you want, you can just select the happy path. You come to this icon here, select it, select traits, and then you say right click, run selected test. It only ran the happy path test, and that happy path will pass either in happy path or in the priority also. So this way, if you have multiple classes, you can select your code by classes. Right now I have only unit test 1, so I see only that. But if you have unit test 2, unit test 3, or think of like a unit test account, unit test home loan, unit test credit card, unit test current or checking account, unit test credit score, all these kind of things, then you will have multiple classes. Then duration, you can run like which ran for how many minutes or how many milliseconds. So it is less than 100 milliseconds. It categorizes like that. Then outcome, pass or fail, Right now everything is passing. That's why you don't see failed category. And then project, of course, I have only one project unit test, so that's why I don't see any more folders down here. But otherwise, it will categorize accordingly. So I hope you enjoyed watching this webinar from C Sharp Corner Redmond chapter. That is me, Vidyavrat Agarwal, and I hope I answered all your questions. And let me thank you. And you guys keep learning. And before I sign off, let me go through real quick through the questions. If anybody has asked anything else, give me a minute here. If there are no more new questions, then we can sign off. Let me go through it. Okay. Jitendra asked a very good question. Difference between N unit test and MS unit tests. So Jitendra, it's a very good question, buddy. Appreciate it. Now, the difference between two is number one, these are two different providers. NUnit is a company which launches a tool. It's a free download though. The website is nunit.org. You can go there, download it. It's a separate executable. It comes up with some APIs, the .dlls. So the key to that is that you download it. It will sit as a folder in your system. It will have some nunit.dlls for unit testing. You have to add references to those in your Visual Studio, and then you build the DLL of your test project, and then you give that DLL to nunit.exe, and then it will run in a separate environment. So I have worked on that a lot on NUnit, but I did not find that very productive. Some teams are very biased with NUnit, but I am not. And I am okay with doing anything whatever team prefers. But if I am architecting a solution and I am setting the guidelines, then I prefer Microsoft unit test because it saves a lot of time. It's easy to debug in Visual Studio if you are using Microsoft test framework because it's part of your Visual Studio. And think of debugging it in NUnit. You have to attach the process because your NUnit, your test case was running in a separate executable, and your production code is sitting in a separate DLL. So you need to attach your DLL to the exe and exe to the process, all these things. So attach to process come into the picture at that time, and that was tedious to really be productive. So that's the difference. And as I said, I have written an article on those. So you may want to go to my blog, type NUnit, and those two articles should pop up, and you can see more how it works. But those are the few major differences which will help you to pick one from the another. And Vishnu Narayan, he liked the example of unit testing, and thank you very much for that. Okay, somebody asked me, Sumit Jolly replied to Gopala Krishnan, there is a unit test generator available as Visual Studio extension. Uh, this is something what I think what Sumit, my buddy, answered is that there are some extensions which can auto-generate the unit tests for you. I am not very fond of those tools, to be honest, because they takes your intelligence away, and they do not really, help you exercise your logical abilities. There was a very nice tool though, uh, and that was known as PEX, PEX. Letter P for peacock, E for England, X for X-ray or Xmas. PEX was a tool developed by Microsoft research team, and that was a very cool tool. And what it was doing, it was generating a whole lot of input strings. I'm telling you some extra thing in addition to what Sumit mentioned about VS extension for creating unit tests. And what PEX was doing, it was generating a whole lot of input strings which you can pass to a method to make sure it is passing and not failing. But unfortunately, that PEX, that was a kind of cool thing, but that PEX doesn't work beyond 2010. So, and after that, for some reason, Microsoft Research did not produce any new builds and releases for that. And Visual Studio 2012 and onwards, cannot utilize packs anymore. So that's unfortunate, but yes, there are some productivity tools available, as Sumit, my buddy, has mentioned. Visual Studio Extension. Sumit is also a very um, 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 dedicated contributor to C Sharp Corner. He's also running a lot of events in New Delhi area, NCR. If you happen to be in India, or if you are watching this live, or you watch it later from India, and you are in NCR, Sumit Jolly is the right person to connect with. And he does a lot of dev events and seminars and webinars for C Sharp Corner as well. And if you want to talk more about VS extensions, I would recommend you go to C Sharp Corner. He contributes almost every week, and you search him, and you can ping him as well for any more questions. And let me skim through real quick if there are any more new questions which I can find. I think that's all. I think I was able to answer all these things. Okay, there is one new question I see from Ravindra Sawant. And guys, please, because I am scrolling it up and down, there are so many questions coming, and it's refreshing each time for me. So if I do not answer your question, I really apologize for that. But feel free to post it on the YouTube channel or send an email to me, and I would answer that question specifically to you in detail by email. Ravindra Sawant asked, how can we apply TDD with legacy application or legacy code? I think this is something what some other person asked. Uh, my apologies, I do not remember the name exactly, and I am afraid I may pronounce it wrong or tell the wrong name. So this question was asked that I already have a large amount of code written. How do I do the test-driven development with that? So if you have a legacy code or something like that, you have to really, it's a technical debt for your team, and you have to estimate that separately, as I answered before. And if it is a C Sharp .NET code, then surely you can do Microsoft Test Framework, and you can work on that. But it's a separate thing. What I can recommend is that if you are doing anything right now, make sure you start following TDD if it is approved by your team and your team has that bandwidth and estimation time for that. So, all right, one more question from Abhishek Yadav, a very intelligent question. While validation in front end, do we also need to validate in backend also? I mean, we can also check for the error in backend. So if we validated our code in front end, should we validate in backend also? Um, so he repeated the question to be precise that I do not miss it. Thank you, Abhishek. Um, I appreciate it. It's a very good question you have asked, and you guys are thinking in the right direction. And I cannot be more than happier because you guys have asked so well questions. I'm so impressed. Well done, guys. Now, let me take a moment here to answer this question in proper detail. Now, these days in industry, there is nobody who is accessing database directly from the UI. I hope you would agree to that. Now, how we are accessing database? We are accessing database from the data access layer. And in my team, where I'm working these days, we are having an MVC hybrid app, and we have SOA, full-fledged third-party systems, and all that. Now, this is a very reasonable thing what Abhishek has asked. Now, what is happening here that in my front end, my MVC controller is doing something, and my MVC controller will throw an error, or my CS HTML will do the validation, whatever. So UI developer responsibility is to unit test that code, and it is handled at the client side, and then you get the error back. Now, for some reason, if somebody hacked it, something happened, and somehow somebody managed to pass that malicious input or wrong data to your database, then how would happen? Then your data access layer, your Dell or maybe your crude operations are being done by a WCF layer, or maybe you are using some entity framework or whatever you are doing. So whoever is responsible for implementing data access layer, that person also needs to exercise that functionality by writing uh, a unit test to make sure it is not failing at the database level and your database is not accepting it. So basically your data access layer is scrubbing and massaging that data and throwing an error back. One person asked, and Nani Kumar asked, the third test case I did, instead of writing code for account number logic again, we call first test case, is it best practice? So it's not about, so always remember what happens. You are living in an object-oriented world. If you are able to satisfy two test cases with one logic, that is okay. The only thing is that another test case should not fail. Now, in my production code, what we did, we fixed the code to make sure that all the three are passing. So that is fine. The best practice only is that each exception, each test criteria needs to be in a different test case. That's the best practice. You should not mix multiple scenarios in one n unit or in one unit test. So again, if I did not answer it well for you and you had something else in mind than what I answered for, please feel free to reply back. And guys, I also apologize if I mentioned someone else's name to your question because it has been refreshing so fast for me. And I was trying to make sense who must have typed this question. Okay, one very good question, I guess, from Abhishek Singh. Hi Vidya, my question is how can I convince for the extra time for unit test in a very tight deadline project? That is interesting. So as I said, it's not you who can do it. And if you are really keen about unit testing and your team is not ready, they are not doing any builds or gated check-ins and gated builds and all these kind of concepts, still you can practice unit testing on your own in your code, and you can do it for your own learning. But it's not a developer's vision only who would say who would say who would say that I need to do TDD or I want to write unit test, and you produce the time estimation for that. It's something that your team and your organization needs to accept that, and they have to visualize the benefits. The vision needs to come from the management, from your PM level at least, or your product group level. It's not an individual developer's effort. You can surely make a recommendation. You can surely try to sell it to them, but if it is a no for your team, I would still recommend you do it as a separate project for you. You can still practice and exercise the unit test in your production code and do not check in that project. But at least you are learning for yourself. And let me tell you, my friends, this will benefit you in the longer run. TDD has a lot to do in industry today. Okay, so I hope Abhishek Singh, I answered your question, my friend. If not, uh, please feel free to drop me an email. All right, one very good question, and I think this is the last question I would take as, to what extent does solid principle affect writing the unit tests? Solid principles in writing unit tests is a different scenario, because in unit test what happens, you are not doing any dependencies, you are not touching multiple files which are dependencies to your production code. So what happens, solid principle may not directly impact, but what it can do is that if you have a production code for accounts and you have a production code for credit cards, do not write credit card unit tests in unit test account.cs, because one of the finest solid principle which at least everybody should follow regardless of knowing all the solid principles or not is the single responsibility principle. And single responsibility principle, as I said before, is that there should not be more than one reason to modify a class. So if you look at your account.cs reason of modifying is adding unit tests to address all the account class functionality. But now you started coding unit test for credit card as well. Now, if you do that, that means you are changing your account class for credit card as well. Means you are adding another responsibility. A responsibility at times is also considered as a requirement. So you have multiple requirement. One is your accounts, one is your credit card, and you are changing your unit test account.cs file. So do not do it. Follow single responsibility principle. As soon as you have credit card.cs in your bank application, go to your unit test project, add another .cs file, call it credit card.cs, and no matter you have one unit test case or 100 unit test case, keep it those in a separate file, regardless of numbers of a unit test, because you are following the best architectural principle, and that is single responsibility. Uh, I hope I answered your question. And again, I apologize if I'm not able to map question with the exact person who asked that, but at least I answered your question. And if you want, you can type your questions back on my YouTube channel and give the feedback to the event also. This event would be soon available on the YouTube. It will be available right now even because it is live. And go to the YouTube channel of mine and put your comments. I would like to hear more from you, and your comments will encourage me to do better and organize more such events, and to other speakers as well, not just only me. So I think that is it from my side, and I shall sign off. And I appreciate that you guys watched this event, and thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful evening ahead or wonderful day ahead, and keep in touch. I would like to connect with each one of you, and I look forward for your comments, reviews, questions, either on YouTube channel or personally by emails. Thank you very much, guys, once again, and I appreciate it. I am signing off. Thank you very much from Vidyavrat Agarwal, C Sharp Corner Chapter Lead, Redmond, Washington.